Attention passengers, we've now reached our destination.
Welcome to the Travel Podyssey, a travel podcast based on lesser-known destinations. I am your host, Jake Twargoski, and on this show, we will give an overview of the destination and discuss our reactions to them. Each episode will feature a different guest, so get your passports ready, and let's go on a Travel Podyssey. Welcome back to the Travel Podyssey. The last episode focused on a certain type of transportation, which is cruising, and where cruising is popular at, which is the Caribbean. And there's other popular places in cruising too, and let's shift our gears to this episode's destination. Like in the first episode, this episode's destination is in Europe, and that is Germany, a country in West Central Europe. Germany is a popular destination for people from all over the world. The United States Census Bureau reported that German is the most reported ancestry in the United States. It is also the most reported ancestry in West Virginia, home of WMUL-FM, and my home state of Florida, due to a lot of people coming from up north, including West Virginia. Although I've never been to Germany, it is on my bucket list, and I invited Noah Monique, a member of WMUL-FM's news staff and the Dead Podcasting Society. Germany is one of his favorite countries, and he has family that lives in Germany, and he has some great stuff to share about Germany, including his favorite cities. Although we can't go through all the German cities because there's so much in Germany, even though it's about the size of Montana. Without further ado, I welcome Noah Monique.
No problem, man. I'm always happy to help.
And can you tell me a little bit about yourself before we get into your travel experiences?
I'm a broadcast journalist major here at Marshall. I'm originally from Princeton, West Virginia, Mercer County. I've been at Marshall for about 2 years now. The School of Journalism has definitely been like a second calling for me. I'm always down to get involved with other people's projects and also start my own.
That's nice to hear. Now it's time to show off the places you've been to, and I know if you've been to Germany because you have a big German heritage there, and I know your last name, Monique, gives me that Spanish or German vibes to it because one of the biggest cities in Germany is Munich or München in German.
Mm-hmm. So it's actually kind of funny you mentioned that. So my last name's actually French, but I have been to France before. I'm not Paris, sadly, but I have been to France. And I have it's interesting because my mom's distant cousin is from Germany, and she was a foreign exchange student in West Virginia for a while. They got to spend a good time with her. And then on my dad's side is actually German. I don't really know as much German as my brother, and he's almost fluent in it. And so that's why I'll be taking elementary German for one of my language requirements next year, just so I can actually be able to communicate with him, my dad, and also my aunt and uncle.
At least you're learning some German because I never been to Germany, so I don't know much about the language barrier there.
Yeah, it definitely gave me a perspective on what it's like living in a foreign country, but also just how different things are run here compared to the States or just even other countries as a whole. It definitely gave me a good perspective, but I really enjoyed it, and I hope to go back sometime soon.
As I said before, I never been to Germany, but it is on my bucket list, and I know you've been all over Germany. I mean, a lot. And do you have a favorite German city in mind you want to talk about first?
Yeah, I think it was visiting Frankfurt, being in the big city. And I remember going there this past summer and going into possibly one of the biggest bookstores. It's like an emporium in there, man. One of the biggest libraries I've ever been to. Escalators, 3 different levels. I loved the layout of the building too. It felt more like a book conservatory. That was really cool to be inside of. I couldn't understand half of the stuff because it was all in German, granted. But what I was able to find, the shop next to it was a figurine made out of glass. But I found really good ones of the Avengers and a Batman little set with him, Catwoman, and Joker. And they also had a huge infinity gauntlet that was made out of glass, so I almost bought that. However, I didn't have enough. Yeah, you can't use, obviously, US dollars in Germany. You have to have euros, so Unfortunately, I could not buy much while I was there, but the one thing I did buy, which was a pair of glasses, I lost while I was inner tubing at Myrtle Beach, and there goes 120 euros down the drain.
And that's one good thing to know. And Germany is part of the Eurozone.
Yep.
And this is the second episode of the Travel Podyssey specifically about Europe, because the first episode was with Reese about the United Kingdom, specifically Wales and England. But Germany is the first episode where I'm going through the Eurozone. And there's one thing I know about Germany: cash is king.
Absolutely, cash is king. Definitely different from using a card, because I don't really even use cash anymore. I just always use my debit card. It's so funny, like there's a train literally is right in the middle of the neighborhood that runs in near the Airbnb where I was staying. You wait for that, pay to get in there. No conductor or anything. That's like, essentially it's a monorail. That's a better way to describe it. It's a monorail. So you ride through there, pull the lever. It's kind of like the bus here, but you pull the lever for like whenever you want to get off. It was just so surreal for me, because you have these tracks that just run throughout all the middle of the neighborhood. Not like New York. It's just like, it's right in the middle of the street where people are walking.
So it's kind of like a tram.
Yeah, that's a better way to describe it. It's not a train. It's a tram.
And because I've been to several European cities that have trams, and I talked it with Reese before, like Lyon, Geneva, Amsterdam, and Dublin. Those are the cities I remember in Europe that have trams. And even in North America, like Cincinnati, Tampa, and Toronto.
I'm actually glad you brought up Toronto, Canada, because I have a friend who I just interviewed this past Friday. He's an Appalachian-based filmmaker. He's restoring a long-lost movie from the early 2000s
That's nice to hear. To keep it back going with the Frankfurt, specifically the bookstore, you said it was 3 stories. It was massive.
Yeah, it was.
And while you were talking about that, that reminded me of the last bookstore in LA.
It is really impressive. I've never been to LA. I've never been to the other side of the country before.
According to Rick Steves, most people see Frankfurt just as a business and transportation hub. But after hearing from you and Rick Steves, there's more to Frankfurt than just being a business and transportation hub.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a monorail system, but it's also just its own big city that's really cool to look at and just travel through, because they've got all the kind of shops that we have, but they've also got some one-of-a-kind foreign shops that some of us have never really been to. It was just really great to travel and just explore that area overall, but I really enjoy just getting to see the sights and being in a huge foreign airport.
And what's your favorite part of Frankfurt?
It was pretty nice visiting the mall and just checking out all the same shops we had, Lego being one of them, because I'm a Lego fanatic. But yeah, they had the Sauron set that was displayed, but full disclosure, sets in Germany, at least for euros, cost way more than they do in the US. It was like a fortune to buy one of those things.
And in Frankfurt, I've heard that there's a Old Town section rebuilt after World War II, because Frankfurt was destroyed during World War II.
Yes, that is true. It was just different overall, and it was kind of neat to explore, because I had really no idea what to expect again, because like when I went, I was only like 9, didn't really remember much, so it was cool to look at and just visit and kind of refresh my memory a little. I first went in 2014, then I went 10 years later in 2024. And it was familiar, but it was also different at the same time, because I was a little kid and now I'm a young adult.
In Frankfurt, I've heard too that you could go inside one of the skyscrapers and you could see the whole city. It's called the Mine Tower.
Yeah, the Mine Tower. I know what you're talking about.
And another thing is that this comes from, once again, a Rick Steves video, that inside Frankfurt there is a little market. And have you tried this sausage called the Frankfurter?
My dad has. This might sound crazy, but I don't like sausage.
Good old sausage person. I do like sausages.
Yeah,
and if I were to go to Frankfurt, I'll be adventurous and try the Frankfurter, because Frankfurt is one of the only places you could try the Frankfurter, which is a type of sausage.
No, absolutely. That's kind of what Germany is famous for, but also their pretzels. If you ever tried a German pretzel, so good.
All right, that is it for Frankfurt. And not far from Frankfurt, there is a city called Heidelberg.
I've been to Heidelberg.
And according to my research, Heidelberg is one of the German cities that survived the World War II bombings, which is why it kept its charm over the centuries.
That is correct. I've been to the Heidelberg Castle where they actually revealed some of that, just reading it. And you get to see that kind of history as you just described with the bombings, but you also to feel like you're in Hogwarts or just some kind of foreign castle, because I never really experienced it before. And you get a really beautiful view of the small little village beneath it. It reminds me of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where it had all these little houses and you just feel like you're on top of the world. It's a surreal feeling.
And of course, Heidelberg is known for its castle and old town. And do you have any memories about visiting the old town? If so, what is your favorite part of the old town?
I do remember being fascinated by the building's architecture and just how kind of tight-knit it was, but when you look at it from afar when I was at the castle, immediately hit me that this was the same kind of village where Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was being shot and setting and architecture. So that took me back because that was one of my favorite movies from childhood, because I loved reading Roald Dahl books. Even though that movie was different from the original material, it was still cool to see nonetheless.
About the old town of Heidelberg, you've enjoyed the architecture of it. Did you like the main streets in Heidelberg?
I did. It was small. It was cool to look at. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. Will still be Frankfurt, just because I've always been more of the city, and Heidelberg's just more like a small village.
As I said before, Frankfurt is more like a business and transportation hub, but if any travelers were to stay in Frankfurt, will you recommend Heidelberg as a day trip destination?
I do recommend it if you want to take a good day trip there and all. Definitely visited a lot of nice scenery, and they had a lot of nice architecture.
I've heard that Heidelberg is a great destination to take a day trip from not only Frankfurt, but also Strasbourg in France. And I know that you have family in this German city called Darmstadt.
It was very nice to look at the scenic views. While I was in Darmstadt, we had my aunt's wedding party there as well at this really nice bar. Had a dance floor and everything. That was with my grandparents, and it's a German tradition for newlywed couples. Their friends will go around asking people like what types of people they are and what types of people the couple are. What is their kind of jobs do they have? What kind of people are they? Stuff like that. It's really interesting to see and look at.
That's nice to hear.
My aunt and uncle, they just recently moved there, and we were able to stay with them, get a vibe for what it was like with living in Darmstadt and the apartment life. They have a really nice view, but it was really cool to visit there and see what it was like living.
That's nice to hear, especially Darmstadt. You have access to a lot of different well-known cities to visit. You have Frankfurt and Heidelberg, as we talked earlier in the episode. I know this is in France. There's the Alsace region with Strasbourg and Colmar. Those two cities are not far. There's also the Black Forest and Europa Park.
And another one I forgot to show you is outside of Darmstadt, Dom or Romir, and I got a clock tower that was probably one of the most amazing pieces of architecture I had ever seen. It's a little outside of Frankfurt, but you had a lot of similar houses and churches that just had this type of architecture and kind of dominance over the city. That was really cool to look at. You go across from there and you'll get to the Iron Bridge where I was at, so you'll get a good view from there, so that was cool to look at.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a good time with your family in Darmstadt, and this right here, it feels like a different type of travel, because in the previous episodes, I've talked about leisure travel, but very little was talked about travel to see family, because in the first and second episodes, I've talked a little bit about family travel, and right here in this episode, mostly talks about with people traveling to different places for family, and at the same time, adding a little bit of leisure with it too.
It goes both sides of my family. My dad is half German, and my mom has a distant cousin from Germany, so you got both sides there.
Are there other places in Germany you enjoyed?
Rudesheim was beautiful to visit. Now that was great. They had a really good steak restaurant. Felt the most like Sound of Music. You got villages like that. You got tourist attractions that are there. This was a clock that you could buy like a little just for decoration. I thought that was really interesting. But we rode a boat and took a little detour just around the place. That was nice to look at. more Gothic castles. This is a grape garden that transformed into wine. And they had a lot of neat little shops, which the one thing that I bought while I was there in Rudesheim, I found a little Freddie Mercury figurine that was exclusive to this German figurine shop that was custom made. So I ended up buying that, and I still have that in my house. So that was really great to do.
That's nice to hear, especially since Freddie Mercury was a British figure and Sound of Music taking place in Austria. Sounds like you had a great time in that small little German town.
Oh, I absolutely did.
And I've never heard of it.
It's a really nice place. I would wholeheartedly recommend it again for anyone who hasn't been.
And is Rudesheim, what is the closest major German city to Rudesheim?
It's not far from Cologne or Frankfurt. They're actually just nearby cities. I had not been to Cologne, Germany, although I would have liked that, no pun intended. It was really cool to see, and those were prospective cities that I was interested in checking out.
And it's on the Rhine River, which is a very famous river. I've only crossed the Rhine a few times, which was when I was taking the train from Amsterdam to Brussels and Paris. And speaking of Cologne, or Kuhn in German, that was one of my day trip choices during my first European trip to Amsterdam.
Really?
But I've picked Paris over Cologne or Kuhn because Paris was more on my bucket list, and
Yeah, no, I get that.
after hearing it from you, maybe I might go there someday. And those are all the places you can think of. And of all the places you've been to Germany, which one was your favorite and why?
Probably Rudesheim, again, for its grape vineyard and how much it reminded me of Sound of Music.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. And we're getting close to the end of this episode. And I know it's a pretty short one. Wait, there's one more thing. It's advising time. This is where the hosts and guests gives you tips and tricks on this episode's featured destination. Alrighty, what advice do you have for people who want to go to Germany someday?
Don't invest money in like a car or like too much on Ubering. I would just walk as much as possible, but also just take it all in because it was a surreal experience. It was just really nice to visit overall. They won't accept US dollars, obviously. It's euros only. So save up euros, save up money if you're ever given them.
Cash is king in Germany. That's one other thing. And like most of Europe, train is probably the mainstream transportation of hopping through different towns and cities throughout Europe, not just Germany. And the other thing is, starting soon, the Schengen area is going to have the ETIAS, which is like the electronic travel authorization thing.
Yep, all those are good points.
So I wanted to bring that up because that is an important thing to talk about. And do you have any other pieces of advice you want to share, Noah?
Take it all in. While yes, it is cool to like just have time for yourself, these experiences are really just once in a lifetime. So take full advantage of it and just admire your surroundings. Just breathe it in because this trip was not cheap. This trip was very expensive. So save up your euros and take it all in because this is obviously very different from how it is in America. It's almost a beautiful experience. And the last time I went there was actually during the World Cup 2014. That was the first time I went. The second time was 10 years later after that.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that it's possible for Americans to exchange US dollars for euros and be on the lookout for how much US dollars is worth 1 euro and the other way back. And thank you, Noah, for these great pieces of advice. And before we go, I know we talked about your favorite places in Germany, and what places do you want to visit next in Germany? What is top of your bucket list there?
I definitely want to visit Munich because that's where people associate my last name with, Munich, Germany. I want to visit there again, and I would also like to visit Cologne. So those two places, really.
Munich and this whole Germany episode is not complete without mentioning Oktoberfest.
Yes, Oktoberfest. I'm glad you mentioned that. My dad's more familiar with Oktoberfest. I knew of it, but I never really knew it was a huge German tradition. It is genuinely something that, if given the chance, my dad and I would like to celebrate with him.
And Oktoberfest is not only tourists from across the world, especially the United States, Australia, Italy, and the UK. It's also an event where locals come together and celebrate Bavaria.
Yes, that is true.
As I said earlier in the episode, German is the most reported ancestry in the United States and in West Virginia, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. And do you have anything else before we wrap up this episode?
No, sir, I do not. Thank you for having me, Jake.
You've taught me a lot of stuff about Germany, and I've never been to Germany before once again, and Germany is one of the countries I want to visit to someday.
Absolutely. You'll enjoy it. You'll have a good experience.
Love to go to Germany someday, and because Europe is one of my favorite continents, so thank you once again.
Thank you, Jake. Have a great day.
I know this episode was very short compared to others, but if you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to hear it again, you can listen to it again on WMUL-FM's SoundCloud and Spotify, and you can also listen to other shows like Rocking the Herd, Rolling with the Oldies, and award-winning news and sports. Not only that, there's also award-winning podcasts too, like List Life and Rope Break. What is going to be the next destination? You're going to find out in the next episode of the Travel Podyssey.